Done it? Yeah. There we
Yes.
go. We're recording.
Good evening, everybody. I always say that if there's a recording. I don't know. Um, but yeah, we'll get started. Yeah, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining either live or uh when you get a chance to watch this. This is uh your onboarding session around sharing of and being effective in meetings. Um, yes. Can I Dan, can we go to the next slide? Thank you. So this is the agenda or contents for this evening. So we'll touch very briefly on roles and responsibilities, effective communication and facilitation, agenda setting, time management, decision making, accountability, and then hopefully there'll be some time for like a Q&A at the end as well. So to start with, in terms of roles and responsibilities, you guys feel free to drop in the chat. I know people are chatting in the chat, or just unmute just to answer the questions. What different roles do you have in meetings as SLT members, and what responsibilities do you have as SLT members, both when chairing and attending meetings? Anyone want to kick us off?
I will.
Yeah, go on. Thank you, Natalie.
So, well, I think it all depends on the meetings because, like you say, we'll wear many different hats when it comes to them. So it's either being a listener or being someone who's presenting, or it could be just answering questions, or you could be the actual chair yourselves.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Um, and yeah, if we go to the next slide, there's a couple of answers. If Dan can do that. Yeah, thank you. So the main roles is either going to be the meeting chair or the chairperson, just like Natalie was saying. So the person that leads the meeting has responsibilities surrounding sort of, opening the meeting, opening discussion, making sure it's on track and all of that. And also meeting member. So um, yes, that could be sitting in on a committee meeting. It could be providing a presentation for other members to comment on. But this is just like a broad sort of definition. If we're stripping it back, those are the two roles that you'll be taking on at one point or another in your roles. Responsibilities are, you guys will know all of this already, but to ensure members' voices are heard, highlighting the perspectives of those that you represent. So our student body, representing student interests, both current and future students, and also ethical considerations and impartiality. So you guys might remember. Oh, Dan, have you just seen that about Andrew in the chat? I think Andrew's.
Yes, yeah. Sorry, Andrew. I just let you in. It only pinged up for me a second ago, so sorry about that if you've been waiting. Are you in now?
I think I can see you, Andrew.
Andrew is in. Just don't know what's going on there.
No worries. Well, Andrew, you haven't missed too much. We've just got started. Okay, cool. So I was just getting to about ethical considerations and impartiality in terms of responsibilities in meetings and chairing meetings. And you might remember from the good governance presentation that feels like forever ago now, that me, Alan, and Gareth did a couple of months back about good governance, and we talked about the principles of public life. And this is just a great example of where that also applies here. So there's again, I've sent you guys the slides for this, so you'll have access to this link. But just to recap, the principles of public life is to sort of conduct yourself in your role as with selflessness, integrity, objectivity, accountability, openness, honesty, and leadership. So that's all of those. If we can go to the next slide, please, Dan. Sorry, I can hear my kitten in the background and I don't know what he's doing. Oh, did I do that? No. I don't think. I will, if we have time at the end, Sharon. I will show the kitten. Dan, are we all right to go to the next slide? Sorry, I thought I could do it, but I can't. Do. Da da.
Dan, are you there, mate?
Well, if not, we can just have a bit of an ad hoc chat very quickly about this. Does anyone have any questions about or need any reminding about principles of public life or any thoughts on additional responsibilities? Because obviously I couldn't put all of them on. So these are like the highlights, but is there anything anyone else wants to add? You're right, Isabella. Dan, are you there?
Dan is just taking a break, probably. Switched off the video, just disappeared. Having a coffee.
That's never happened.
I thought I could go through the slides myself, but I can't. I can only
Because you
zoom
haven't got
into the
permission at
slides.
minute, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
It's really strange. Dan's the last message Dan actually said on you was just going camera off, so I'm getting a bit of a slowdown. But since then,
oh, okay, so maybe that means his connection's faulty.
Joy,
It is that time.
are you able to actually take control?
I don't think
Because
so.
I've got on my screen, I've got take control of the presentation.
No, all I have is like a plus and minus to zoom it into the slide itself.
Right, give me a minute. Let me see if I can do it.
That would be great if you could.
Your request for control wasn't accepted. Yeah.
So I reckon Dan's the person that has to.
I'm back.
Yeah.
Dan's
Yay.
back. Yay.
I'm sorry about that. My internet just dropped out, and I wonder whether can I give someone control?
You should
Just
be able
look-
to give Jazz presenter rights, I think.
How do I do that?
See.
Oh, do I click on her? No, spotlight for everyone. Right.
Well,
If you go on people,
Let me share again, and in the background, I'll try and figure out how to do
Yeah.
that, just in case I do drop out again. Obviously, I'm experiencing some technical issues
yeah.
over here.
it is the time. I reckon it's the time of evening where everyone's online. Like that EE advert about broadband.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I mean, it's a nice segue into the next slide, though, because the next slide is titled Effective Communication and Facilitation. So.
There you go.
Irony.
That's funny. Oh. And cool. Can we go to the yes, the next slide is effective communication and facilitation. But if we can go I can see my mouse. Does that mean I can do it now?
I've just given you control. I have no idea what that means in practice, Jazz. This is a brand new experience.
Cool.
for me. So yeah,
It's
see how it goes.
it's not giving me an option to. Oh, now have I done that? Okay, I think I've got it. I think I've got it, guys. Thank you, Dan. Yes, so next part is effective communication and facilitation. So the big sort of skill here, I mean, it will come across, and I know that you guys will know about this already, and it comes into your role in different ways. But active listening is a really huge skill, especially in meetings, and I think also especially in meetings online compared to in person. You know, it allows you to sort of understand and see things from other people's perspectives. It helps you build trust and rapport with stakeholders. And it ensures that you're, you know, we're all being inclusive of all the voices in the room. So here on the right is just a couple of examples of how you can exercise active listening in meetings. So paraphrasing and summarizing, so restating, sort of repeating back what somebody has said to show you're listening, but also to confirm that you're understanding them correctly, and also show that they're a valued member. Ask clarifying questions, so that can help avoid misunderstandings, get some more information, and non-verbal cues. So this one, you know, using eye contact, nodding, other body language to signal engagement and attentiveness, it's relevant in in-person meetings, but also, you know, online. If we're thinking about the reactions you can do on Teams, I think it was Sharon earlier did the laughing face. You know, that kind of thing shows that you're attentive and listening to what the person's saying. Now, is it going to let me? Now it. Hang on, let me just move you over here. Doesn't seem to want to let me click the slides. There we go. I can't tell now if it's me or Dan, but that's okay. So what makes an effective chair? I think the biggest thing is being prepared in advance. I think that goes for being a chair of a meeting, but also, you know, a member of a meeting. Ensuring that meetings start and finish on time. Making sure everyone has a chance to respectfully share their view or their point, their perspective. Clear decisions are reached at the end of the meeting, so that everybody knows what their tasks are going away from this, that kind of thing. And also, I think being an effective chair, it's really important. It can be difficult, but it's important to try and be as impartial as possible, because you're essentially the facilitator of the discussion, and you, with that, have a sort of element of authority. And so in order to help students or, you know, volunteers, members, sort of have their own perspectives and ideas, it's really helpful for them to be able to contemplate that without hearing your views straight away. Oh yeah, Sharon, hello.
Sorry, I can't put my camera on. I've got two cats sat on the keyboard. If you go to a meeting regularly and there is a member of the student representative team that tries to take over, how do you pull that back?
That is a very good question.
Natalie Baker knows exactly who I mean from the grin on her face.
We will pin that one because we can cover that in a couple of slides, I think. But it's a really good question and something we can chat about later as well.
Thank you.
No worries. Again, I don't think it's letting me move the slides. Or maybe it is. Again, I can't tell. Here we go. Agenda setting and time management. Right. So agendas. I realized when putting together this presentation that agendas are maybe my favorite parts of meetings. So why are they important? They give purpose. So, you know, they help set the tone of the meeting. They help provide direction. It ensures that no key points or discussions that need to take place are forgotten. They give clarity as well. So they, you know, they can outline meeting objectives and expected outcomes. So that's like quite a big part. Oh, hang on. Slightly nervous that I've lost my slide. I've gone in a funny order. Don't worry. What am I saying? Yes, expected outcomes. So it's a really big part of having effective meetings is knowing at the start what you're hoping to have by the end. So, you know, if you're having a meeting because you need to make a decision on X, Y, or Z, and it's time, you know, it's time sensitive, you know, you need to come away from that meeting having an answer to that question. Agendas are a really helpful way for you to be able to illustrate that to all of the members. And also finally, you know, agendas don't have to be a big formal document like I'm sure you'll have all seen for every single meeting that you have, but having a bullet point list just that goes out to any attendees in advance is really helpful for, you know, people to come prepared as well as, you know, yourselves as chairs. So, you know, for example, with the Student Voice monthly forums that Nicola's going to be taking, chairing come the new academic year, you know, we send the agenda out in advance, but the agenda is also listed in the meeting description. So everybody can see just a very basic bullet point list with some time allocations for a presentation that's going to be 20 minutes, space to discuss for 10 minutes, you know, that kind of thing. It can just be, it can be basic and still be effective, basically. Dun, dun, dun. Can't tell again. Dan, can you go to the next slide for me if you're there, if it's working? Time management. Excellent. And also just to note, sorry, my brain went a little bit blank. I think with the issue with the slides, we've gone in a little bit of a funny order, and that's fine. We will circle back, but that's a great example that I will make a note to comment on later. But yeah, time management. So staying on schedule during meetings is what allows for meetings to be effective, right? So, you know, you're putting an hour into everybody's calendars, you know, it might be that you've got other meetings or other commitments that are after that, you know, we can't afford to go over on time. You know, people have other commitments, that kind of thing. And again, agendas can really help to not only for you to figure out maybe how long a meeting needs to be, but again, just to keep to time. You know, if you've got a really long agenda that you can't be spending 15 minutes on the first item. So again, you can use them to set expectations, refocus discussion if things go off topic. I think, yeah, setting expectations, I think, is the big part that where time management and the agendas come in together. And that relates to what Sharon was saying previously, you know, I think setting expectations at the start of the meeting is really important, and it also allows for you guys to set a boundary when it comes to off-topic discussions. to say, you know, we don't have time, like we don't have time for this in this meeting, you know, that kind of thing. And like it says here on the slide, if discussions are taking longer than expected, you know, you are also able to consider adjusting the agenda in the meeting. So if there's being a really fantastic discussion that's being had and a lot of ideas are being brought forward that are really, really valuable, you know, there's no harm in making the decision to explore that further and perhaps move items on the agenda that aren't as pressing to the next meeting or in an email follow-up, you know, that kind of thing. And managing off-topic discussions. So there's 2 examples here of how to manage off-topic discussion. So gentle redirection, which is the one that we're talking about when we say, you know, we've set expectations at the start of the meeting that we need to keep focused on what is on the agenda. Perhaps things have gone slightly off to one side, and so it's really important that you guys feel confident and able to just steer the conversation back to the agenda. And you know, by setting that expectation at the beginning, it's much easier for you to do that without dismissing participants' contributions. I've just added another example here, which would perhaps work better, you know, at one of your in-person SLT weekends. But there's no reason why, if it works for you, you couldn't take it during an online meeting as well. So this parking lot technique of just having a list or, you know, a document where off-topic ideas or issues just can be noted down so they aren't lost in chatter, and then revisited later. And again, that ensures that that person, those views are being acknowledged whilst still sticking to time and, you know, not allowing one person to talk for too long about a subject when you've got however many other people in the room that also deserve their chance to speak. Let me just have... just going to circle back to effective communication and facilitation on that note. If it's going to let me go back to slide 5. Apologies for this, folks. I reckon it was when I think I wasn't sure if I had I wasn't sure if I could do the slides yet, and I think I probably just whizzed through about 5 slides in one go when I was trying to figure out if my buttons were working. But effective communication and facilitation. Oh, we've already done active listening. This is the slide I was looking at that I was that I don't believe we've covered. Am I right in thinking we have not covered this slide yet? Thank you, Natalie. I see the nod. So clear and concise communication, whether you're a meeting member or chairing a meeting, is really, really important. It allows you to articulate ideas effectively. So again, it comes back to that point about always being as prepared as you can be ahead of a meeting. The clearer and more succinctly you can make your point, the not only the more effective you're being, but also the easier it is for everybody else to follow the discussion and make their own contributions. So specifically avoiding jargon or overly complex language. You know, the OU acronym world is a lawless place, and we all know that. So that's especially what we're thinking about here is, you know, if there is an acronym, because, you know, there are a lot of acronyms and there'll be different acronyms in different areas and different faculties. But just, you know, if there is an acronym coming up in a paper or in, you know, minutes, or somebody's just making a point about oh yes, I can see we're talking about acronyms, thank you. If somebody's making a point and, you know, from their perspective, let's take the example of FAS. Somebody from FAS is talking about something or other in their faculty specifically, and, you know, they're saying FAS this, and I don't know, I can't think of another example of a course on FAS. But, you know, they're using acronyms that perhaps somebody else in a completely different area of the university will have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. As chair, it is absolutely fine. It's great even if you could just take a minute just to pause and be like, and just to clarify for people that aren't aware, FAS is the acronym for Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences. You know, it can be just a quick interjection like that, or it can be just a comment just to regroup and just be like, just to clarify, is everyone familiar with these acronyms? And just giving people a chance to just put up their hand or comment if they don't know, because sometimes it can be really hard to acknowledge that you don't know what an acronym means, you know. So that's really important. Persuasive communication. So it's a great idea to think of strategies for framing arguments and ideas and points in a compelling way that resonates with the audience. And this reminded me about the wonky session that you guys had with Jim Dickinson back in July at the SLT handover weekend. You know, that sort of point, evidence, explain, you know, backing up your statement with you know, an example, or, you know, a data point, or what whatever it might be for that particular situation. But that is how you can make persuasive arguments. So that's worth considering. And then on the other side of this slide, we've got encouraging inclusive participation. So consider what techniques you think would work in whatever space you're in, to ensure that quieter members have the opportunity to contribute. And we'll touch on this a little bit later as well. We've got some examples of group participation. But I think that's a really, really key one for us and the students that we speak to, is just making sure that everyone feels comfortable and confident in making their points heard. And also balancing contributions. You know, if there's if you're in a meeting with you know, 5 student, I'm always going to go back to student reps because that's, as you guys know, that's like sort of my area of expertise. But if you've got a group of 5 student reps that you're chairing a meeting with, and 2 of those reps perhaps have been you know, they've been around the rep system for and again, I've just realized what I did there. When I say rep, I'm talking about student representatives. You know, representatives have had perhaps years of experience, and they have you know, very strong opinions and views about perhaps, you know, something that has been happening, or you know, in a, you know, the way that teaching has been brought about, that kind of thing. That can make it really hard for perhaps a new, less experienced rep who doesn't have that same confidence to perhaps disagree, because, you know, we all will have different opinions. We don't need to all agree with things, because that's why we're all here, is because we all have really unique perspectives and areas of expertise and all of that kind of thing. So, you know, if you've got 2 reps that are very, very vocal and confident in meetings, it's really important to ensure that other members are also given the opportunity to speak. And you know, as a chair of the meeting is absolutely fine. Oh, no worries, Sharon, you can catch up on the recording later. What was my train of thought? Have I lost it? Oh, it's absolutely fine for you as chair to just interject and say, sorry, Jazz, we you know, I really appreciate everything that you have to say, but I just want to make sure that Dan hasn't got anything that he would like to add before we hear the rest of your points, just because we have got, you know, we have got X amount of time for this meeting. You know, like we can't not stick to time. And again, it goes back to that setting expectations, boundary setting that we've talked about before. I'll just pause there for a second just to check in that all sounds all right with everyone, because I appreciate that. I feel like I've been talking really fast, and also there was a bit of the whole everything with the slides. If anybody has any questions, then please jump in. If not, I will move on.
Just to jump in, I was just typing out an answer to Isabel in the chat. I thought I might as well just tell you myself. So she asked about the list that was put together of the acronyms.
Yes.
Which was to go out in the handover packs, which I don't think they sent out because I think it was an awful lot of pages and it was very like, ooh. So I think the plan was for it to sit within the team space, but it should be in the old team space. So I'm sure we can find it and bring it over.
Yeah, I've got a feeling that me and Kira looked at it and it was, there was so much of it that and then we were like, oh well, shall we try and just do the important ones? And then when you just try and do the important ones, it still feels like you're missing. It's like impossible to make the decisions about what's important to different people. So yeah, good point, Isabel. And I think either Kira's got a copy, and if not, I'm sure that Gareth will still have a copy somewhere, and we'll get that and save it in the team space for you all to refer to.
Yeah, bro. Was that your point as well, Isabel? I saw your hand was up.
Yes, it was. Yes.
Okay.
Just to draw your attention to that one. So
yes.
Yeah, and we don't need a paper copy, Dan. It's just, you know, to have the electronic document so we can refer back to it whenever we have maybe an acronym we don't know, so we can check it. So it would be helpful if it could be moved from the previous team space to the new team space.
Absolutely.
So, thank you.
Yes. Yeah, that's a really a great point. So yeah, thank you, Isabel, and that'll be really helpful for everyone, I'm sure. And I'm holding myself to that as well, because there are so many acronyms and I don't know half of them. So, Brill, did anyone else have any other burning questions? We only do have a couple of slides left, so I will take silence as a thumbs up if everyone's
just
happy.
jump in again, sorry.
Please. Yeah, no, come on, don't apologise.
Just something that I've seen, and it's starting to be done in some of the OU meetings as well, that as a chair, if you sort of have people coming to your meeting, then, you know, by all means don't worry and ask people to provide a glossary as well, because often if the sort of like someone from the OU is coming in to do a presentation, they always assume that we know exactly what they're talking about. And so if you ask them for the presentation in advance, and if you can see in that there's not really anything that's being fully clarified, then just go back to them and ask them to bring that along or provide a written glossary as well.
Yeah, that's such a good idea. I'm going to write that. I've lost my pen, but I'm going to write it down, because that's a really good point, especially with, again, like the monthly student voice forums, you know. Real. Thank you, Natalie. See, we're all learning something this evening. Okay, if we skip back to, if it's going to let me. This. We're going back or forwards. Oh, why is it working? We're nearly there. I'll just do it really slowly so that it's right. Decision making and accountability. There we go. I think I briefly mentioned this a bit earlier on in the presentation about techniques to group decision making. So there's plenty out there. You know, again, it's up to you guys, depending on what meeting you're chairing, what the purpose of that meeting is, how big of a meeting that is. You know, one or all of these might not work for you, but here's just a couple of examples of ways in which to you know, facilitate group decision making that ensures everybody is involved. So round robin, which is the classic, where, you know, each person in the room, whether virtual or in person, you know, shares their opinion on an issue before any voting is taking place, if there is a vote. And this just means that not only is everybody given a sort of platform to speak, but it also helps, you know, again, that thing about everyone coming from different perspectives, it helps everybody identify a common ground and perhaps consider things in a different light as well. You've got a SWOT analysis. So, oh, now I'm testing myself. SWOT is an acronym for strengths, weaknesses. What is
opportunities, threats?
Yeah.
Thank you, Dan. I was going to say outcomes. I was like, I know that that's not the right one. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. So, you know, if there's a really complex decision that needs to be made, this might be a really great chance to, you know, assess possible impacts of decisions, and help everybody perhaps feel more confident in the decision that you're making. And then finally, number 3, voting with a twist, is similar to the SWOT analysis, but again, different. You know, if there's lots of potential outcomes, and you guys need to, you know, come up with one, then having everybody maybe rank the options in order of preference will help to sort of gauge overall preferences, but can also lead to more nuanced decision making. So they all kind of relate to one another, and, you know, again, none of these might work for you, or one of these might work really well for whatever project you're working on, but there's just a couple of examples. Oh, and then accountability. So as you guys know, you know, you are elected officers, elected seats. I can't. What am I trying to say? Elected student leaders, and so accountability is sort of inextricably linked with that. And here is just a couple of ways in which you can feed that into the way that you are, you know, facilitating meetings as chair or attending meetings as a member. You know, having minutes, or, you know, keeping notes of what is discussed at a meeting is a really great way not only to track your progress on a project, but also just to remember what was discussed, what ideas were said, you know, because not everything can be brought forward all of the time. And it is an example again of how the chair can perhaps assign a minute taker at the start of the meeting. You know, it doesn't need to be a strict you know, role holder. It can just be you know, Natalie just coming to me and saying, Jazz, would you mind taking the minutes for this meeting? And then everybody can have a look at the notes that I've written afterwards, just to make sure that everyone's happy with what's been said, and that it's reflective of the meeting. And then following on to that really nicely is actions. So we haven't touched on actions too much in this presentation, but much like agendas, I really like actions personally. So if you're given an action in a meeting, that is essentially you are being tasked, most likely by the chair, to complete a job or a task, a to-do list type thing, you're being tasked to do that before the next meeting. Or perhaps if it's a really big piece of work, then it wouldn't be before the next meeting, but you're at least expected to go away and work on it before the next meeting, and then you can come to the following meeting prepared with an update, just to say, oh yes, well, we weren't able to finish this action, but we've made X, Y, and Z progress. And again, it just helps you keep accountability for the work that you're doing in your roles. And finally, go into closing the feedback loop. Keeping a record of the meetings you attend, keeping a record of minutes, actions that you've worked with or collaborated on, all of those things is a great opportunity for you to keep a record of your own work, and especially wins, because wins will always or will almost always be noted in minutes of a meeting. So it's a great way for you guys to not only track your progress as student leaders, you're also tracking, you can also track the work you've done. And it's when we're thinking about what we were talking about a bit about back at the handover weekend about in 6 months, what do you want to have achieved in 6 months time? How will you make sure that you sort of keep a log of what you've achieved? This is a great example of applying that into your meetings as well. I feel like that was a bit waffly, but lucky for you guys, that's the end of all of me speaking. And now we've got, I was going to say now we've got time for the Q&A, although it is 7:15. And so as the quote unquote chair of this meeting, I will say apologies for the technical difficulties. And I'm happy to stay on if you guys are free. If you're not free, that's absolutely fine, because I respect your time. And whatever else I was going to say about keeping to time. So if anyone has any burning questions, then please feel free. But like we said, this will be. Oh yeah, hello Isabel.
Hi. It's not a question, it's just a comment for the other SLT members, because I saw in the slides you put a reference to the NCVO, and NCVO it's called? I can never remember the acronym. But anyway, I did the training chairing meetings with them, and I can highly recommend it. So if you haven't done it, just check it out. So.
Oh, that's a great point. Thank you, Isabel. Yes. So again, you guys have all got the slides. On the last slide, I've just put a link into NCVO website where they've got some points around running effective meetings. It's quite focused at trustees, so Andrew, it might be of interest, especially to you. But I suppose both Andrews and Natalie. I'm just realizing how many trustees we have in this room all of a sudden. Yeah, like I said, everyone. Actually, I'll stop talking and pass over to Dan.
Yeah, I had a couple of things that sort of popped into my head during the presentation, and I think Jazz should retract her. My third thing is Jazz should retract her apology for technical difficulties, and I'll apologise for that one because I don't think that was Jazz's fault at all. So first one is in your roles, if you are invited to chair meetings, especially by the OU, and you feel like that isn't appropriate, that your contribution to that meeting would be much better as just a student that's able to engage in the conversation rather than having to focus on keeping the meeting on track and who's got their hand up and all of those things. And obviously I'm aware that chairing meetings can be a little bit nerve-wracking for some people. I would say do feel confident to push back, because ultimately if you're saying I'd really like to contribute to your meeting, I don't think being the chair is the best way to do that, then you're still saying to those people that you want to be involved. So yeah, obviously that's going to be on a case by case basis, and if you like the idea of chairing, that's fine, but it can be a lot to think about chairing whilst also trying to think about being able to contribute and feeling comfortable to contribute. The second thing was just in relation to actions from meetings, and sometimes they're useful if you're in a meeting where conversation's gone on for a really long time and you're trying to draw it to a close, is like actually use the idea of like, okay, let's hone in, like, what is the action that we're taking away as the chair? Like, use that as a way to sort of cut the conversation short and say, we need to make a decision now. Like, what's the action that we're taking away from this, and who's going to do it? And you're kind of, without telling everyone to stop talking so much, you're sort of saying, okay, we all need to stop talking now. So that can be a really useful tool to kind of politely draw conversations or discussions or debates to a dignified close. I think that was everything I was going to say.
Well, yeah, thanks, Dan. That's a really good point, and I think also that's a really good point about the Open University asking you guys to chair meetings, because it goes back to one of the earlier slides about as chair, you do have almost a responsibility to be impartial. So it's much harder for you to give opinions in the same way as you would as a member. So that's definitely worth considering, depending on what your priorities are for that meeting, what the purpose of that meeting is. Does anyone else have any questions? I can see we're chatting about training in the chat, which is brill, and I would go on, Dan.
I was just going to say, Sharon's question earlier, I don't know whether we sort of covered it. What was she asking? There's someone in a meeting who, it's not that they take it off topic, but it's that they kind of take over the meeting altogether, and it's very difficult to kind of, for anyone else to then have their say. And then obviously I'm guessing in that situation, people that disagree with that person find it even more awkward to maybe sort of put their opinions forward in that situation. Was that more what she was kind of getting at, and how you diplomatically kind of take back control, and how you do that, either from a chair's perspective or in the meeting? I don't know whether it sounded like other people were sort of aware of what she was talking about.
Yeah, I think that was pretty much what she meant. It's sort of like keeping things on track and stopping one person becoming the center of it.
Yeah, I think that is a challenge for the chair. I don't know, Jazz, what you think in that sense. A lot of the time, there is kind of polite assertiveness stuff that just has to be done, and sometimes it is saying, whoever it is, like, sorry, Jazz, we've heard from you quite a lot. I want to make sure we hear from everybody else. Obviously that can be frustrating if you're not the chair in a meeting, and perhaps those are things that need to be discussed outside of the meeting, to say, like, to the chair, like, I found that really difficult to get my point across. I think in future meetings it'd be really helpful if that was dealt with in a different way. Jazz, I don't know whether you've got any kind of suggestions on that front.
Yeah, I think that's really good points. I think it comes back to the boundary setting that we talked about a little bit about, as the chairperson, opening the meeting, setting expectations, all of that sort of housekeeping work that we always talk about. But also, if those sort of initial things don't bring about the results that we're aiming for, I think it's also worth I think that it's the assertiveness is the part that I think many or all of us would struggle with in that scenario, and part of it will just come with practice. and maybe a bit of trial and error, you know, perhaps just speaking to, you know, if speaking to that person outside of the meeting and saying, look, it's we really, I really value your input. However, I'm concerned that we're not hearing from everybody. And you have so much experience and so much expertise, however you wish to put it. But we really want to try and hear from other people as well. And
it becomes,
yeah.
I was going to say, but it becomes a thing where, like, you frame it in your head like you're being rude to that person, but actually potentially, you know, it's not so much being rude, but it's like the negative impact that it has on the rest of the people in that meeting by not dealing with that sort of behavior, you know, is equally, if not worse, as a potential outcome. So I think, yeah, Jazz, I think that's a brilliant way to kind of approach it, is, you know, have a polite conversation. You know, if then this person, probably they're not necessarily being rude, or I hope not anyway, and it's more just a case of like over enthusiastic, maybe not like, occasionally people lack self-awareness when they're in meetings and they sort of dominate.
And I think, just going back, I know Isabel's mentioned about assertiveness training, which also sounds really, really good. And I suppose just to circle back on that is that if anything that we've touched on in this session, you're, you know, upon reflection, you're thinking, actually, maybe I need a little bit more training with this, or I need to talk this through a little bit more. I'd really urge you guys to, utilize the training opportunities that you have, and also chat to your staff link. So again, with that piece about, because that's one thing that I put a lot of information in this presentation, I appreciate, but navigating perhaps conflict within a meeting, or differing opinions, or whatever it might be, is like quite a big part of what this could be. But that's something that, you know, the staff team, your staff link, can help with, or, you know, there'll be training and stuff as well. Does anyone else have any other questions? Similarly, if you don't, that's absolutely fine. You know where to find us. Because that was quite a lot of information in almost an hour now. Oh, great. Thank you, Andrew. Glad to hear it. And yeah, Nicola Powell's great for training, and like Dan said in the chat, just for those that are watching the recording, you know, if people are really interested in, if there's a consensus that lots of you want training on assertiveness or chairing meetings, then we can do a group training session. So just let us know. And I'm sure Nikki will be happy to help. But yeah, thank you so much for your time this evening, guys. Yes. Should we close it there? I don't know.
Yeah, shall I stop recording?